All right, welcome, brothers and sisters, to the Bears Gym for a little layman's Bible study today. Layman is just somebody that studies the Bible that maybe didn't get the blessings of the high church to be the head reverend and pastor. Just a lay preacher guy here in the Bears Gym, studying the Word. May you study it with me. So here we go today, Genesis 29. The Bears Gym is continuing the study of Genesis. It's been a long study. It's a long book with a lot of long chapters, and we're learning quite a bit. It's very wonderful to take the time out and go over and over wonderful books in the Bible. And Genesis is one of those books. Today we're picking back up with Jacob. Jacob is like the patriarch of the nation of Israel, because pretty soon, in the next few chapters, we're going to start calling Jacob Israel. And Israel will be Jacob. And Jacob will be Israel with his 12 sons and the 12 tribes of Israel, and thus we have Israel. And that's kind of where Jacob kind of falls in the plan there. It's all just part of the plan, and that's Jacob. We started out in chapter 1 of Genesis and the creation, and we got Adam and Eve, the problems they encountered. We went then to Noah. We moved on, and eventually we came to Abraham and to Isaac and now to Jacob. And this is just part of the plan of God dealing with the people on earth, with the children that are his promised line, through which comes the Messiah, Jesus Christ. And those of us that are Gentiles, that we become grafted into the eternal tree. And that's the tree that God gave through his Son, Jesus Christ, and Israel is grafted in, and many of them rejected Christ, so they were broken off. Those of us that are Gentiles were grafted in, but those that were broken off of Israel could also be grafted in again if they simply just would humble themselves and receive the Messiah, Jesus Christ. And so we haven't quite got that far yet in history in this section, but we will. So it's going to be a long journey, and I hope you stick around with me to follow in the scriptures with me in the Bears Gym. And by the time we get all the way through the Old Testament, through the New Testament, and to Revelation, and should we ever get that journey done, which is going to be a long haul, we'll start over and we'll do it again, Lord willing, and so forth and so on. And so let's continue. Today we're picking up in 29. So we're going to spin you around here just a little bit. Then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. If you remember last time, Jacob had kind of gone out from his father. They kind of pulled that slick deal on Isaac, and then he was sent off to his own countrymen in the east, and on the way he saw the stairway to heaven. We talked about that, how God kind of speaking to him in a dream, and now he's kind of in that place now, almost to the children of the east, where he's going to find his wife, and he's going to live there for a long time and work for his wives for a long time. Very few men would work for their wives as long as he worked for his wives, okay, or wife. You know, he was really hoping to land one of them as his wife, but he kind of got tricked into getting the older one, which wasn't quite as pretty and really wasn't the one that he wanted, but then he wound up getting both of them, and that's just kind of the way they did it in those days. Okay, not judging, not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong, it's just the way they did it. Okay. Anyway, let's move along. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field, And lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it, for out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. And Jacob said unto them, My brethren, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran are we. And that's kind of where he wanted to be, Haran. And he said unto them, Know ye Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said unto them, Is he well? And they said, He is well, and behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. So kind of when he sees Rachel is kind of love at first sight. I named one of my daughters Rachel. Just a little family note there. And the picturesque here of a guy way out in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of sheep herders, and them rolling the stone off the well, and a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful young lady showing up, and him being magically in love. That's like so picturesque. If you could paint a picture in your mind, you know, all these old scruffy nerf herder kind of guys out there with the sheep, you know, kind of like me, dressed, you know, like a factory rat. And, you know, they're all kind of dirty from the desert, and all of a sudden here comes a beautiful woman that was also a worker and a sheep herder, but beautiful. And they were like, here, or at least Jacob was. It was like, wow, he's like floored, in love, okay? And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, and neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them. And they said, We cannot until all the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone away. Then we water the sheep. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. So see, Rachel was tough. She was like a factory worker, farmer daughter, rancher, worker. She was a hard worker. And she was amongst the men working hard. And she stood her ground. So she was tough, but she was beautiful. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. So he kind of gets involved now. He kind of becomes, helper, with the sheep. And what he didn't really understand at this point is that he's going to be really watching the sheep for a really long time. And this is kind of like the starting point. Verse 11, and Jacob kissed Rachel. Well, there they obviously this is love at first sight. And lifted up his voice and wept. Okay, well, he was blown away. He was floored by her beauty, and his love was like that's it. He's done. He's in love. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So they were semi-related. Okay, kind of like this way, and then down. Okay. And it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house, and he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, Surely thou art my bone and my flesh, and he abode with him the space of a month. So he wound up living there and hanging out with them and being part of the family already. And eventually he's going to work 7 years for Rachel, and that turns into then 14, because a little slick Willie thing kind of happens, and he's kind of tricked into taking her sister, but he gets her too. So he winds up working 14 years and then longer for his wives there. And Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? So he's already kind of talking him into being a worker for him there. He's a good worker, and he wants him to be, part of the crew. And so he's telling him, well, you don't need to work for free, and so what will your wages be? And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. So eventually he wound up being with the older first. He doesn't know this yet, and then he will eventually then get Rachel a week later, and then wind up working another 7 years for Rachel, whom he agreed to work the 7 years for to start with. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. So tender-eyed could mean, she had one of the eyes that drift a little bit, maybe swollen, deep in the sockets or something. We really don't know, but it just means her eyes were tender or sensitive. Maybe she was a little hard to see. Maybe they were squinty. It just says, they were tender. But Rachel was the beautiful one, and that's whom he wanted. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And like I said, that really kind of wasn't done in those days, giving away the younger daughter first. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. So the agreement was reached. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her. So, 7 years, that's a long time to wait to have her, to be with her. And nowadays, we can't wait, a couple of days, and, they got to live together, and, the girls are giving up their white dress for nothing, and the guys, go from one girl to the next. This was a godly man. He worked there without touching her in an immoral way for 7 years, and she was a chaste virgin, and that is the way God has a marriage to be. 2 virgins get married, and then they're together. Okay, none of this. We're just, we're basically living together, almost married, except we don't have a ring. And the covenant, that's wrong. That's sin. That's fornication. That's not God's way. Doesn't matter what society says. It's wrong. That's not God's way, and that's sin. And now we're to the point where a lot of the churches, littler churches, and the inner city, it's so rampant. And I'm not just saying it's just not in the inner cities; it can be in the outer, out in the country. But it's more tolerant though, because the media plays it out because that's the norm. Well, that's not the norm, and it's sin. And the pastors need to crack down on it and say, look, this is wrong. You need to get your lives together. It doesn't matter why you're doing this. It's wrong. It's sin. Okay? And the pastors have to step up to the plate and exercise 1 Corinthians chapter 5. They have to do it. But we live in a society of tolerance. But that's not love. Tolerance is not love. Okay? That's tolerance, tolerating sin. And there's way more verses to deal with that, but we're not going to deal with that right now. Right now we're going to get back to Jacob, who is a virgin and a godly man, and so is Rachel, a virgin and a godly woman, and that's kind of where we're going here. Okay, now we get to the 7 years are up. Jacob says unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her, that he may know her and be married. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place, and they made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. So it was nighttime, the candles were low. Maybe she had the little Mideastern veil on, thing. He didn't really know what he was getting. And in the morning, surprise, And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah his maid for an handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, What is this thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? So guiling is kind of like tricking or deceitful tricking, beguiling. And so he tricked him, And Laban said, Oh, my brother, my son, it must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Well, that might be kind of true, but he didn't really explain that to him. And he didn't really tell them. He did trick him. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve me with her yet other 7 years. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel his daughter to wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in unto Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. So sometimes in the Bible, it says a week, and a week can mean 7 years, or a week can mean a week. And sometimes a week of years can mean, 7 years, 7 days process. But in this process, let me explain it out for you here, as he worked 7 years. Okay, and he didn't go into either of them, either Leah or Rachel. Then finally, they had the wedding feast, and then they got together, and it was Leah. And then he found out, well, it's Leah, not Rachel. Then they had a week of honeymoon together, and then he was allowed then to have Rachel. And then after that period, he worked another 7 years for Rachel. So basically now he had 2 wives and with 2 handmaids, and he's going to wind up working 14 years plus, for these women. And then he's going to give them handmaids. Eventually, you're going to see, then he also eventually goes into the handmaids because the women's wombs dried up, and they decide that it's okay to have their maids. So they're kind of given to him as a concubine to sire offspring also. And so I don't want to jump too far ahead of the story, but I'm just kind of preparing you with the groundwork here. All right. Verse 31. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And hated is not as you would think, well, I hate you. But it means that he didn't love her the most. And that's why in the New Testament, when it says, if you don't love your parents and your wives and children and so forth, then you can have no part in me. But it's the same principle there. He didn't say hate them, but this word is loving them the most. And that's why your relationship with Jesus Christ, you must love him the most. And when you do that, the rest of your relationships on this earth will be proper. When you start loving your spouse more than you love God, then you have a problem. Because then your spouse starts telling you things that are wrong, contrary to the Word of God, and then you get yourself in trouble. Okay, so your love for Jesus Christ and our Heavenly Father must be first and foremost and most important, and the rest of your relationships then fall in after that. And that's what it's saying here. It says he hated her. I don't know that he hated her, but she wasn't loved like he loved Rachel. So that's kind of the quick definition of hatred here. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, Surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction, now therefore my husband will love me. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, Because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given me his son, this son also, and she called him Simeon. So she's got 2 sons now, Reuben being the firstborn, and Simeon. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons, therefore was his name called Levi. So now we got Levi. Now we got 3, Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she saith, Now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. So she kind of was done bearing after the 4 sons for that time period. So now we have Judah. We have Reuben, we have Simeon, we have Levi, and then we have Judah. And Judah is the line by which Jesus Christ the Messiah then comes later, conceived through Mary and Joseph, and that whole story, which we'll talk about way later, but just kind of give you an idea. That came through Judah, but Reuben was the firstborn, the lion of the tribe of Judah. Okay, we cranked through chapter 29 pretty good, pretty quickly. The rest of this saga we're going to pick up in a little later, okay, in chapter 30. But in chapter 29, we had a huge time period that was elapsed. We had, in that one chapter, we had him coming up to Haran. And it says that he was there about a month, and then he worked then for Leah and Rachel, quote, all right, for 7 years. So at least 7 years has transpired, and then another week then for Rachel, and after some time, then God opened the womb of Leah, and then she has 4 children, 4 sons. It doesn't say the daughters. Then in that process, she may have had daughters, okay, but the Bible, doesn't name the daughters always. Sometimes it does, but mostly it doesn't. Just names the sons because they're kind of part of the lineage. It's just the way they did it. Anyway, I think we did pretty good there, Genesis 29, in a pretty good amount of time. And I hope I didn't bore you. I didn't bore myself, and that's not too hard. Anyway, God bless you from the Bears Gym. Genesis 29 is complete. God bless you. Until next time, we'll see you.